there any further motions without notice? Members, that takes us to motions on notice. The Honourable Rod Caddies.
President, I move that this House calls on the West Australian Labor Government to publicly acknowledge that record high net migration levels experienced in recent years are placing unsustainable pressure on the state's public services, housing supply, transport, community infrastructure and the natural environment. B, calls on the WA Labor Government to admit that the current health infrastructure and resources are insufficient to meet demand, as evidenced by unacceptably long waiting times for emergency, specialist and elective care, resulting in deteriorating health outcomes for too many West Australians. And C, calls on the government to recognise that the severe shortage of stable, affordable and appropriate housing is preventing a generation of young West Australians from achieving home ownership or secure rental accommodation, with the consequence that many are delaying or foregoing starting a family altogether.
Members, the Honourable Rod Caddy has moved that motion. The question is the motion be agreed. The Honourable Rod Caddies.
Thank you, President. Now, as the first part of that motion talks about immigration, I'm going to address the elephant in the room, which a lot of people don't like to speak about. And I mean, the Labor Party knows full well the huge devastating impact that mass migration and rapid population growth is having on Western Australia. They've admitted it time and again through their own words, yet they continue to spur it on. Now, they're not prioritising the interests of West Australians by doing that. This motion isn't about demonising migrants. I want to make that clear. This is about mass migration, mass net migration. It's about priorities. Priorities from a government that's failing to meet the expectations of the people who are in this state already. The WA government admits that mass migration is a problem themselves. I mean, I'll quote here in an ABC report on April 4th, 2025, Labor Treasurer, the Honourable Rita Saffioti, said the other point about population growth is it encourages and increases demand for housing and also consumption. She added, so that again helps support other parts of the economy. And even the Federal Housing Minister, the Labor's Federal Housing Minister, also wants young people to find it harder to find a home. I'll quote from her as well. She said this to the ABC on the 28th of November 2024. "We're not trying to bring down house prices." She later clarified that may be the view of young people, but it's not the view of our government. And returning to the Honourable Rita Saffioti for a moment, she stated in the 2024-25 budget on May the 9th, and I'll quote her, "West Australia's economy has defied predictions. People are moving to Western Australia like no other time in our history. This year alone, West Australia's population increased by a record 94,000 people, the equivalent of the population of Bunbury and Karratha combined. Managing our extraordinary economy and the population growth that fuels it undoubtedly brings its opportunities and pressures, including additional demand for housing, health and education services." I mean, from statements like these, I can only deduce that Labor is acutely aware of the infrastructure burdens that are caused by massive population growth, yet it seems that they still enthusiastically welcome it. I mean, I understand we need, migrants coming into the country to fill certain positions, jobs and stuff, but why are they so enthusiastic on, and especially the federal counterparts, on having such mass immigration coming in that we can't sustain? I mean, you'd hope it's not to protect property portfolios or real estate interests, or to paper over the deep state. Just get some water here. Yeah, I do actually, thanks. the deep-seated problems in this state, allowing them to, boast about the budget surpluses while West Australians' personal budgets are in the red. So it's fine we have these budget surpluses, but it's not great when people are going without and when the people in the community that they haven't got budget surplus, they haven't got surpluses in their account. I mean, our people are struggling more than at any other time in living memory with the highest rent stress in the country, in the nation. And this is directly caused by Labor's policies to ramp up demand on housing through mass migration. But don't take my word for it. I'll quote more Labor MPs who I know that mass migration is not good for everyday West Australians. I've got some here. There was the Honourable Pierre Yang stated on the 21st of August. You can. I don't intercept in your contribution,
Order,
so I'm not taking interjections.
Order.
Thanks.
Really only ought to call order once or even never. The Honourable Rod Caddies has the call.
Thank you, President. Now, as I was saying, the Honourable Pierre Yang stated on the 21st of August in 2025 in this place, and this is quoted from Hansard, "Our state's growing population means that we need to allocate more funding for infrastructure." We've got the Honourable Clara Andrich on the 9th of April 2025 in this Legislative Council, criticising past governments for population growth without support. And I'll quote from the Hansard, "We kept seeing population growth but no infrastructure to support the people moving into those southern corridors." She added, "Good governments think about what transport infrastructure is needed for not only imminent population growth, but population growth over the next 10 to 15 years. Apart from Metronet, Labor doesn't seem to have been putting in place the infrastructure needed, yet they still cheer on mass immigration. Even more recently, once again, the Honourable Rita Saffioti, I'll quote the Honourable Rita Saffioti on the 31st of January, has acknowledged the ongoing crisis, saying, "We know housing supply remains a critical issue both in the immediate term and for the future." And again, in the 2025 budget, she called housing costs as a major fact in cost of living. WA hit 3 million by the end of 2024. That's a 2.4% growth rate, which was the fastest in the nation, far outpacing Queensland and Victoria. But the government seems to even try to hide them figures. I'll quote the Honourable Stephen Dawson, who seemed to imply earlier this year that migrants were coming to Australia were primarily interstate migrants. And I think that was a response to my colleague, the Honourable Phil Scott, during estimates. This is quoted from Hansard. "No, we do not, and to suggest that the population growth is totally subject to people coming from overseas is totally wrong. We have seen, over the past couple of years in particular, a significant shift of people from the east coast of Australia coming to Western Australia. Because the strength of our economy, our mining sector is nation-leading, continues to employ hundreds of thousands of people. And while we had a border during the COVID-19 period to keep sickness out, there is no plan to put a border in again to keep Victorians out, as much as I would love their football teams to stay away from time to time." Now, the data tells a different story. According to Bureau of Statistics, net overseas migration stands at 41,395, dwarfing the interstate migration, which was 11,675. So that's like 75% of that is net overseas migration into WA. That's not, as he put it, trying to keep interstate people out of our state. That's 3/4 of that population that come here were from net overseas migration. So downplaying overseas contributions only serves to obscure the drivers of our infrastructure strain. The projections have our population at 3.57 million by 2036 if unchecked. That's unsustainable. We've seen even the increase we've had now, the problems we're having. We've seen the freeway, the times you're having to wait, all the different highways. Now, Shelter WA's Kath Snell has said, and I'll quote her, "It is mind-boggling that Australia's wealthiest state has the worst affordability for renters, with average renters spending over 30% of income on median rent, plunging them into housing stress." I mean, federal Labor, they claim that they're importing skilled workers, but housing all Australians. Robert Pradlin notes, and I'll quote him, "Businesses across WA are struggling to find staff because there's nowhere affordable for them to live nearby." Now, these supposed skilled workers don't even have a place to live. Even community services can't recruit workers because they can't afford the regional living. Cotality reports nearly half of median income is needed to service a new loan, with the median house value now 8 times the average income, up from 6.6 5 years ago. Senior economist Tom Devitt, so we'll go to an economist here, and I quote him, "Over the last 3 years, WA population has increased by over 250,000 people, but only 56,000 new homes were completed. 250,000 people would probably require an additional 125,000 homes." I mean, HIA shows Perth unit prices up 26.2% yearly. Yet I think the Cook government is telling us that 3-bedroom apartments on public land for over $1.5 million is affordable. I mean, even 1 bedrooms at a development in Fremantle costing over $740,000. These aren't affordable. I don't know in anyone's mind how you can think something $1 million is. My point is what I've been stating, that people can deny all they like and target and attack people's character for bringing up a true problem that many people in this state and country say is an issue, and that is population. So, moving on, I've taken the interjection and I'm not saying any more for now, but also we're not approving houses. According to our ABS housing approvals...
Order, member. There was another member on his feet, though he wasn't seeking the call. I just want to check why he was on his feet.
President, I just want to call into place Standing Order 50. I'm having trouble hearing my colleague even at the back here from these interjections, and I think we need to have a respectful debate on this matter.
Thank you, honourable member. I will call the House to order if I think it is becoming too unruly. Interjections, though not parliamentary, sometimes occur in the point of contentious debate. Therefore, I will invite, though, the chamber to curtail interjections, particularly when they're talking over one another, to enable the honourable member to hear. The Honourable Rod Caddies.
Thank you, President. Now, the public housing wait list is worse still. I mean, for a government that, I recall back when I was working in the past in a office for the Honourable Colin Tinknell, was calling out social housing, talking about how they were going to be so great about, creating more social housing. We've got 20,264 people are currently on the public housing wait list, with an average 3 years spent on that wait list. 3,000 people are waiting half a decade. Let that sink in. 3,000 people waiting half a decade for social housing. I mean, maybe Labor's hoping some of them drop off the wait list through other means. I mean, last year, 102, I believe, died while waiting on that wait list. Now, dwelling prices are tipped to surge a further 16% in Perth, and this is driven partly or considerably by population growth, not by birth rate. Now, I'll quote from the Nightly. "Surging immigration have made houses unaffordable for many Australians over the past 25 years. Trying to accommodate more than 300,000 new migrants every year, a city the size of Canberra, will drive up prices further. Excessively high levels of immigration will inevitably push housing affordability disastrously high, particularly for first home buyers and renters. Now, here's another one from the Sydney Morning Herald. Housing demand is actually stronger than it would be if, for example, all our population growth come from adding children. But because we're adding adults, it immediately feeds demand. I mean, we could be doing many things. We talk about what we could be doing. We could make it much easier for young people to be having children into the future. At the moment, no. I'm not accepting that interjection on such ridiculous comment. To end my thoughts on housing, I'll leave you with this from Labor government's own budget this year. Our strong population growth has driven significant demand for housing. I mean, these pressures aren't just about housing, they also extend to healthcare as well. Where again, I mean, Labor admits the strain but fails to act. The Minister for Health Infrastructure, the Honourable John Kerry, on the 12th of August, I'll quote what he said: "We face additional pressures in our hospital system because of our extraordinary population growth, with an additional 300,000 people in the last 5 years, which I know is also creating pressure on the housing system." So here it is. You've got the Honourable John Kerry saying this.
Order.
The Premier, the Honourable Roger Cook, said on the 11th of November, "We know that with a growing and ageing population, we need more capacity, more beds and more staff." Well, bringing in more people isn't going to fix that. It's getting bad out there. We've all received the correspondence from constituents. I've been getting so many of them, and also not just the emails I'm getting. It's really the heartbreaking stories. I'm sure every member has been getting them about, waiting for medical care. I've had numerous just in the last week about that. I mean, our ambulance ramping hit record 240 hours in June for our regional areas, and ambulances ramped for 7,074 hours last month. 30% of admissions into the emergency department had waiting times of 8 hours. Now, patients face nearly 3 hours wait beyond recommendations. Widespread non-urgent surgery cancellations amid a resource boom. It just shouldn't be happening. We shouldn't have people waiting for surgeries and medical attention when we have the amount of money we have coming in through the resources in this country. It just shouldn't be happening. People shouldn't have that as a problem. Now again, I'll quote the Honourable Pierre Yang, who said, "Our population has increased," this has come from Hansard, "our population has increased by 300,000. 300,000 new West Australians have come to this state. The pressure on the health system, infrastructure and the education system from the increased population is undeniable." Undeniable, members. This is your own member from the government saying that the population growth, the increase of population is having massive pressure on the health system, the infrastructure and the education system. So that's your own member saying that. I hear it to blame your federal colleagues' neglect, but after 9 years in power, this government have had 9 years to do a lot, but instead they talk about budget surpluses while people out there aren't getting the attention they need in the health system. Now, I'll talk about something else that maybe the Greens could even get on board. Maybe the Greens can get on board. It's the environment.
Order. The Honourable Parwinder Kaur. As I've said before, no one can understand your interjections when you talk over each other, so you need to question whether they have value in the first place. The Honourable Rod Caddies.
Thank you, President. As I was saying, maybe this is something that even the Greens should be able to get behind, the environment. The The rapid population surges mean more cars on congested roads, strained public transport and bigger demands on our water and our energy. Experts warn that... experts...
Order.
Yep.
Order. The Honourable Rod Caddies.
Now, the Greens have spoken out about the property developments such as the one in Stoneville. You know, there's things like this happening, you know, a big part because we're having to house a lot more people. They argue that it'll have a huge impact on the black cockatoos, yet if population growth was in check, this urban sprawl expansion onto our beautiful environment wouldn't need to happen. Right now, West Australians are being betrayed by a government that hasn't done enough in combating the problems. I mean, it flows onto the amount of people that are living on the street. This push with immigration and not doing enough for the housing problem. I mean, we're about to debate on that assisted buying bill for. It's a good thing. It's going to help people get in, but it's just a band-aid solution to a problem that should have been addressed a long time ago. Over the last 9 years with the budget surpluses we had. Now, yeah, thanks, Honourable Member. I can see that on the screen up there. Now, I think I mentioned experts warn that as Perth surges towards 3.5 million by 2039, more than a decade before previously thought, that's going to be a real problem. We've already seen that massive population growth. We haven't been able to sustain that fast population growth. Now, again, I want to finish off with saying this isn't targeting migrants. It's about the numbers of migrants. It's about making sure our infrastructure and services can cope with the amount of people coming in. I'm happy for people to migrate to Australia, just in the right numbers, the right amount of population. If we're talking federally, my members federally have said 130,000. It will be neutral for a while. That's with people leaving and deaths and stuff. So anyway, I'll leave my contribution there and thank you.
Members, the question is the motion be agreed. The Honourable Ail Makua-Chuot.
I was not planning to get up and respond to this motion, but I think whenever I hear anyone talking from One Nation, I become so irritated because we know that very well. For me, as someone that came here to Australia, you know, on humanitarian crisis, and have seen everything in the system for the last 20 years, and have watched Australian politics. One of the reasons to why I should have said no to become the first African woman in this parliament was because of Pauline Hanson, the One Nation leader who made me hate Australian politics, and I will make that very clear. And I'm not the only one that can say that. Many people have been traumatized by this woman, and she's your leader. When you, Honourable Member, when you came to this parliament and done your first inaugural speech, I thought you were a softer version of Pauline. But I think I'm starting to put you in that category. I'm sorry to say, but President, I'm speaking.
Order, member.
You can interject.
Order, members. I would encourage the chamber to not point and to direct their comments through the chair and not to individual members.
Thank you, President.
The Honourable Ail Makua-Chuot.
Thank you, President. Again, you know, Honourable Member started his speech by saying Labor, Labor. But I started my speech by saying One Nation is known for dividing Australian. A classic example is what we have seen on the Australian TV a few weeks ago of Pauline dressed in attire to actually divide the community once again. When these communities are the reason to why we're here. Australia is not a country of white people, it's not a country of black people, it's a country of First Nation people. We are all immigrants into this beautiful country. And we should always be mindful of that. We all came from somewhere. And for some reason, people are so entitled. They just feel like they're entitled. A particular group feel entitled. And for me, 4 years here, I want to leave a legacy of being honest. Stop being entitled, and get to Parliament, have a policy stand that is fair. I'll give you a case. All I've been hearing from the honourable member is, migration. What is wrong with migration when migrants are the one that are looking after our aging population? They're the one that are looking after our healthcare. We know that very well. Western Australia needs a workforce. We need a workforce, honourable member. You know that. We need a workforce. We need people to actually help us. The new hospital that is getting built, we don't have enough doctors. We don't have enough nurses. That's why we're bringing people from Europe. We're bringing people from all around the world with the skill set to help the workforce. And you need to acknowledge that. Stop misleading the society. Stop misleading the society, because that's what you're good at, because at the end of the day, honourable member, we all have children. You need to lead by example. I just feel like, sometimes we come to this chamber and just pass our own personal interests. It's not about us. We're in this parliament. There's some things sometimes, to me as a leader, that I might not agree with, but it is not about me. It is about people who have elected us to come to this parliament. President, thank you. But again, just to make it nice and short, it is about people who have elected us to come to this parliament. So we got to sometimes put our personal interests aside as elected official in this chamber, and think about those impacted. What your leader has done a few weeks ago to divide the Muslim communities, what it has done on a Muslim child, what it has done on a child that don't feel they have a sense of belonging. Already these children, they're not privileged. Most of the time, their parents have to work 10 times harder. That was my story. That's the story of many of the community members that come through. Not because they're not good enough, but because, they're new in a society where A, they don't have meaningful connection, B, language barriers. There's a lot of factors to why in intergenerational trauma, a lot of these people already came with so much baggage, and, to be in a position where many of us as elected officials, we have that privilege. We have, that control where we are here to make policies, and then we become the roadblock of these communities. It's just so appalling. It's so sad, Like sometimes I tend to sit down and just watch. Like I've seen people talking about, not because I like the situation of what your leader is good at doing, but sadly, I think she's grooming her upcoming elected official to just think like her. And it's just very sad. Like, honestly, I will not make a comment to any other political party, but I am proud to make a comment about, Pauline is someone that has actually not attracted me to the Australian politics. And I think many people that look like me feel the same, because she's not representing us. She's basically against us. And now I'm seeing this in this chamber, and I just become traumatized every day. Where are we going to go within the next 20 years if we're going to have leaders that are here to divide the community? So anyway, President, I just thought I'd get up and respond. But again, migration is needed in Western Australia. You are quoting my parliamentary colleagues. It is needed. We need migration in Western Australia to build, you build the hospital to build the road, to help our aging population, to help us when we get sick over the weekend. I will talk about One Nation voter, a lady that I don't knock at her house, somewhere in this one, in the last election. And I don't knock at her house, and I'll close by this one. And I don't knock at a lady house, and she opened the door and she said, to be honest, you're a very lovely woman, but I have to be honest with you, I don't like any other political party but One Nation, because One Nation support to stop migration. And she told me a story that is so appalling, and she's like, I don't know why they keep promoting this workforce. Like, now my son is in a particular hospital having a certain situation, and the doctor that is looking after my son, I just cannot understand him. His English, I just can't even understand any word that is coming out of his mouth. My body just dropped. And I just breathe in and out because that's the way I deal with my situation. Because at the end of the day, sometimes we do get judged. I breathe in and I responded, and we had a really lovely chat. I had a really lovely chat with that woman, and she felt bad. And I will not go into the details, but that is a classic example. Imagine if that was an inexperienced young person wants to experience, a political day where they're door knocking, a woman telling me how bad, and she's not even thinking of the fact that her relative is actually being treated by this person that do not speak English as a first language. It might be their fourth language, but they're educated, they're qualified, they're in that hospital, and apparently their English is broken enough for them to not be qualified for that job. And again, these are the people that you're grooming. You're grooming these people, and you're causing more division.
I'll give you some stories about Labor door knocking.
You're upset.
Order, members. This is not a conversation across the chamber. It is a contribution, a debate contribution to the motion. Please keep your comments directed through the chair and other members to not interject. The Honourable Aol Makua-Chewot.
Yeah, thank you, President. I think you're reminding us to be polite in the House. I think I'll end my contribution here because I think I've already made a point of what I need to say. And honestly, I do not support this motion. So thank you.
President.
Members, the question is the motion be agreed. The Honourable Brian Walker.
Thank you, President, and I'm very happy to speak to this motion. I'm also very happy to actually use the contribution of my colleague, the Honourable Aol Makua-Chewot, as a wonderful example of why this discussion, precisely this discussion, is needed. Because we have here a picture here of the dichotomy, of the split, and of the inability or the unwillingness to actually listen to what has been said, and rather than putting up objections and counter-arguments, to wonder and to think what's actually behind this. Because between the two contributions here, I see actually no comparison. We have a real issue in our society, and what we've seen just now is a wonderful example of why this issue persists. These issues persist. The motion here is actually looking at a number of areas, so I'm just lost my place here. Here we are. Three issues: mass migration, the health infrastructure, and the housing. Now, it might interest people here to know that it's actually all the same thing. It's actually all the same thing. And if only people in this House and people throughout our state would actually listen, pay attention to what's going on, and look at the underlying reasons. They're all worthy of discussion. All of us need to pay attention to this, and all of us need to deal with the underlying cause, not the superficial ones which cause the anger in society. I'm sure you'd agree with that. Now, what we're seeing here is an institutional failure, a series of institutional failures, and a look at the two-party preferred here. We've seen the problem on both sides of the House just now, because under both your watches, this has continued. And I'm going to put it to you that both sides of this House here, who've been in power for so many years, have done their very best to fix the problem. So why are they not fixed? Why are they getting worse? There has to be a reason that's not being addressed, because otherwise these two wonderful sides would have done something about it successfully. But that's not been the case. And this is also a reason why I read in the papers today that it seems now that the One Nation, surprisingly, is threatening the actual two-party preferred because of the very stunt that Pauline Hanson put out there, appealing to those who are feeling unheard, appealing to those who feel that the current system is not speaking for them. And I think this should be a warning sign for all of us here, that we need to listen more. We need to pay attention to what's going on and deal with the underlying problems. Now, I'm only really qualified here to speak about health. That's what I've been doing for the last many decades. And so what we're seeing here, if you look at the general principle, looking here at what did he say here, it's the current health infrastructure and resources insufficient to meet demand because of the poor funding, I'd imagine. Now, what we're seeing here, and we can check this in every budget since however long, is that the costs for health are increasing inexorably. Every single budget we're seeing a government saying we are putting more into health than they did. Every single time. But the benefits to the health system, are they improving? And I've put it to you that we're getting success in research, we're getting success at making diagnoses, at finding treatments, but is the general wellness of the population improving? And this is a very serious question I'd put to you. Is the wellness of our population enhanced, increasing? And I'd put it to you that it is not. We are in one of the wealthiest countries of the world, one of the wealthiest states of the wealthiest countries, and poverty here is increasing. Depression is increasing. Societal dysfunction is increasing. We are not doing well. And the consequences here, of course, was budgetary consequences, societal consequences. Look at what's happening with the way that our institutions are being treated, how the police is being treated, how the judiciary is being treated, indeed, how healthcare workers are being assaulted on a regular basis. The issues we've got with finding housing, looking after the children, we see it daily recorded in the newspapers, if you can trust the newspapers, of how poorly we're being treated by the people we're trying to help. What is the underlying cause? Now, if I focus on wellness and health in particular, I could look at general practice, which is what I am, a specialist general practitioner. Primary care. Primary meaning the place of first point of access. Well, apart from mum putting a plaster on you and giving you a finger a kiss. Primary care. Now, look at the areas where we need to be acting here. For example, medical context. If we simply had more nurse practitioners in the clinics, could we then treat sore throats more efficiently? Could we then have a sore ear treated? How about managing things, simple things? People coming in, I'm not feeling well, checking your blood pressure. Would a nurse practitioner be good? We've got regulations, but saying, no, we can't do that, or have to special training, we can't do that. So that they come to the general practitioner. Now, me, I'm a specialised general practitioner. I sat in my cardiology clinic one time as a cardiologist thinking, this is boring. I'm doing the stuff the GP should do. I'd rather get back into general practice and manage, for example, someone with chronic kidney failure, the protein content of their diet and helping them to find a better way of managing their way of life. Yes, with specialist referrals to a dietitian. That is what a general practitioner is. It's a specialised topic. When I tell my practitioner, my specialist colleagues what I do, they say, wow, that's such a lot. A cardiologist will ask me, will give me information about the cardiac health of a patient, but then I've got to tell that person what I'm doing for the renal function, what I'm doing for the liver function, what I'm doing for the mental function. There's a lot we're doing. Specialist, general practitioner, and someone comes in with a sore finger to me, taking up my time, when I could be dealing with things which are far, far, far more important than the sore finger. But it's sore, doctor, I can't go to work, I need a sick note. This is what's stopping general practice. Why don't we have more nurse practitioners? Well, because regulations, ladies and gentlemen, regulations. We could look here at the personal choices, the nutritional choices that people do make. I mean, I was out at a very good function last night, but the food was fantastic, but it was anything but healthy. Very, very tasty. And every now and then, why not? But when you see people loading their shopping baskets with packets of pre-processed foods, and you look at the size of the people who are buying it, you realise there may be a connection between the size of the basket of your tray and the size of your waist. Perhaps a bit of exercise might help as well. Well, it's not as simple as that, is it, of course? But nutritional choices, exercise choices, ways of life choices, they are a personal choice, and the general practitioner can't do that. In fact, I know from my perspective that only 30% of what I say gets done by the patient. Only 30% of the medication I prescribe gets taken as appropriate. We can look at the governmental side, the structural changes you referred to here with the costs of the infrastructure of the health. Looking here at a decaying Royal Perth Hospital. Looking here at I remember my first term of Parliament when East Metropolitan proudly pronounced a $10 million reduction in budget from the emergency department, but then saying there will be no reduction in services. What a wonderful exercise in bureaucratic stupidity. And we put up with that. So there are governmental areas, personal choices, and medical control as well. It's a complex system here. But one thing I can tell you with absolute certainty, colleagues in this chamber, the collapse of the health service is predicted. It is inevitable. If we carry on unchanged, the collapse of our health system which currently is a sickness system, is inevitable. And all you can do is hope that the other side is in power when it does collapse, so you can point the finger and blame them. Because at the moment, neither side is taking action appropriate to the needs. This refers, I think, to a concept I'd like to bring to your attention, the brittleness of society. There is a book written in 2012 by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, Anti-Fragile, Things That Gain from Disorder. Fascinating. And the tacit explanation is that over-regulation, top-down control, and bureaucratic optimization, these are familiar terms, I think, in Parliament. Over-regulation, top-down control, and bureaucratic optimization create societal fragility. This is measurable. And I'm looking just now in the health service at the issues of over-regulation of a health service, resulting in a collapse of a system, bit by bit by bit. And we could address that. In fact, we're dealing with a bill right now, looking at the state development, which is going to be nothing but regulation to an end, which the leader of the Honourable Steve Thomas is pointing out is going to actually not work. It's going to make things worse. Let's wait and see, he says. And there's plenty of examples of that very same bill, with the regulations being put in place and the thing just not working, getting more and more cumbersome, more and more brittle. We have a serious problem here. They would take the immigration, for example. Specifically, it was said we've not got a problem with immigration, says my colleague here from One Nation. And the immediate perception is, oh, you're anti-immigration. What we are anti at the moment is anti-children, because we're not producing enough children as Australians. Therefore, we have an ageing population, an imbalanced ageing population, and we need to take care of the elder in our society. And who's going to do that? The smaller population we've got just now is busy working 2 jobs to afford the houses and afford the increased cost of living so they can exist. They don't really have much interest in producing children because they can't afford to produce children because we have made it unaffordable for them. So what do we need? We then need immigration. Sustainable immigration by all means. This is where I disagree with my colleague here in maybe the choice of wording, but the principle is the same. We need immigration because we're not producing enough children. Now, we could put out this maxim here and saying, like they've done in China, giving a fee, more children will get more money, rather than the one-child policy, and let's give you some extra money for your children. And what's happening in China just now is saying, no, we don't want that, it's just too complicated. There's too many old people here, the young people are not going to have an easy time of life, we're not going to make it, we're not going to make children because they're going to have a hard life. I don't want that. And what are we seeing here? The birth rate here is falling. We could talk about the reasons for that. There's medical reasons too, of course. But the birth rate is falling. And therefore, either this country is going to fall apart because we can't, there's not enough lively people to look after the days of the work of the day, or we bring people in to do the work that we can't do. And this is what we are doing. And the government is doing a fantastic job, I think, of encouraging people to come in. But what I do recall, and I'll tell you a story from another country, so this doesn't put any pressure on this house here. This is in Germany. I was doing a house call, and it was to a Turkish family. Now, in Germany, we've got Turkish Gastarbeiter, the guest workers. And this man called me to see his mother. So I walk into this house with my bag. House calls were still being done in those days. And there's Grandma sitting on the sofa, in front of a wall carpet of Mecca, and the son is translating. Now, his mother, the grandmother, has been in Germany for 30 years. She has not a word of German in her mouth. She has lived in our nation for 30 years and has refused to speak the language. She can't even go and shop and buy a bar of soap because she's only got Turkish in her mouth. She's got no German. What an insult to the country. So when we bring people into a country and they refuse to assimilate and refuse to actually be part of the country, I'm not taking dejections from you, I didn't mention that. So when they
Order.
do that, thank you.
So, I have already pointed out that we do not point and that we make our comments through the chair, particularly when responding to interjections, which are always unruly. Therefore, I invite the member on his feet to think about his contribution regarding the motion and to direct it through the chair. The Honourable Brian Walker.
Thank you, President. Now, this is another example here of why we need to be very, very careful what we're actually saying, because the tempers can rise with this. It's very, very sensitive. And the subtleties of understanding what's going on in a society where we're not having cohesion in society need to be addressed. Now, one of the things I'm always saying I do not wish to take interjections, honourable member. One of the things I'm always saying at the citizenship ceremonies is I'm welcoming people to be a part of a tapestry, because we have all the different colours coming together to form a beautiful tapestry which is beautiful in itself, rather than the US concept where everyone comes into a mixing pot and becomes just one kind of bland colour. All become just is bleh. We have here the chance of having a multicultural, beautiful tapestry, which works when we appreciate the beauty of the tapestry. But if you only single out one thread from that and say this is good, then we have a problem. Then we have a problem. And this is why we need to listen very carefully to what's going on and look at how we, as practitioners of the art of legislation, are able to create the regulations which free up our society to allow us to develop. The three areas mentioned here, I haven't got time to speak to the housing just now, well, maybe a little bit. But the immigration coming in is essential. But those who come into our country need to abide by certain rules as well. And part of that is to assimilate into a country and to accept your role as part of that beautiful tapestry. So that each part of us, each one of us, is treasured as an important coloured thread to a beautiful picture, which creates a picture of Australia which is admirable throughout the world. This is what I envisage. And anyone who wants to attack that or to limit it to one colour is not one of my family. That's not who I am. So now, we look here at the consequences of what we've been doing to our society and the ageing population, the lack of a young population to care for all. We need to have immigration. We must have that, but it must be such that it's sustainable. And it is not sustainable if we allow it to actually have an overwhelming transfer of power to one particular group, like, for example, the white racists, like, for example, the gangs which are coming together and assuming a racial context and saying, we're right, we're going to actually make you suffer because you haven't treated us right. This is societal dysfunction and decay and must be addressed. Now, when it comes to the housing, of course, the question we've got here, of course, is who's building the houses? Because you don't have the people to build the houses. And this is why we need tradesmen to come in, tradespeople to come in, to help build our society to the way it comes. I remember when I left Australia back in 1970, when I left, partly because of the Vietnam War, we had just reached a population of 1 million. WA had just reached a population of 1 million, now coming to 3.5 million. Have we got the infrastructure we need to adequately support this? I'm thinking particularly of our remote and regional areas. Have we got the infrastructure, say, in health, which would manage the health of the patients I have seen in, say, Newman, in Fitzroy Crossing, in Derby? Do we have the infrastructure which gives the same quality of service to people in these more regional areas that we have in metropolitan Perth? Now, we're not going to have an MRI scan in every small town, we're not. But how are we managing this with a large state as ours? Are we investing enough in the people? Are we investing enough in the infrastructure? Or are we wasting a lot of it, for example, in building a racetrack in Burswood? For example, in contemplating buildings which would give more pride to the individual than needs the society. I'm thinking of the wonderful Elizabeth Quay just now, but also looking here at the possible upgrades to the convention centre. A lot of money being spent when it could be spent elsewhere. I will speak to some degree about how our federal government is actually very happy to spend Australian dollars to support the military-industrial complex of the US, when I'd rather have Australian dollars being spent in Australia for Australians. I think that would be a far better use of our money, and how we as legislators here might have a word to say at state level and at federal level. Look after us, first of all. We are the people. Look after us, rather than wasting our money with projects which actually have no benefit to the individual. Those middle-class workers who are now finding themselves the working poor and struggling to put food on the table for their children, whose very hearts are breaking because they're doing all that they can to keep their family together and finding out that the dollars simply aren't sufficient. And whereas the political side here is, we're doing fine, you're all wrong. The separation, we're changing the laws, we're making it better, you did it all wrong. This negativity we've got here, and also this beating on the breast, look at us, how good we are. This is not what we need. We need truth. We need the truth in this House. We need the freedom as people to expand into who we really are. And we need the justice in our system, which allows those to exercise their free choices freely in a free state. And these are the things we ought to be focusing on, the important things which matter to the people. So I welcome this motion. I think it's a very useful motion, and I do think it highlights one of the problems we're facing of this discord in our society, which we need to mend, of the destruction we've got, of how we're fighting each other rather than working with each other. I've often spoken to people about the members in this House and say, well, listen, do you know, if we got all of us in one room together, around about 80% of all the topics we'd find general agreement. I think we agree on most things. There's a bit on either side where we will disagree. And what we need to learn is how to disagree in a spirit of friendship, support, of understanding. What are you on about, really? What is the real problem? Rather than saying, I disagree with you, you're wrong. We need to find ways of communicating with each other. We had the story here about the patient who couldn't understand the doctor. Oh, it's okay, he's got qualified. Communication in the health system is everything. It's not just the verbal, it's also the social side, it's also the spiritual side. If you're not communicating with your healer, you're not going to get healing. There's such a lot of things we need to speak about and understand and take a close look at what's going on rather than prejudging what other people are saying, doing, or thinking. Look at ourselves, how can I help? How can I contribute to an improvement in our society? And that, colleagues, that is why we're here in this chamber.
The question is the motion be agreed. The Honourable Ewan Sibma.
The government.
Sorry, my mistake. The leader, the Minister. Well spotted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy President. Thank you, and thank you to my colleagues across the chamber for rectifying that minor oversight. Look, I stand to confirm that the government will not be supporting this motion. And look, I found the whole motion and indeed the explanation of the motion quite confusing. The mover of the motion said the elephant in the room is mass migration, but I don't actually know what mass migration is. What's the mass mean? What's the number? What's the number? The mover of the motion said some skilled migration is okay, but not mass migration. So I think I understand some skilled migrants are okay, but some are not. Not really clear which ones are okay. So I guess which migrants, So remember, I'm trying to understand which migrants are okay. So skilled migrants are okay. Skilled migrants are okay if they're doing the skills that we need, but as long as they're building the houses and the roads, which is good, right, we can tick that one off. Are resettled refugees okay? I'm not sure. Is the Honourable Ayorma Kuchawat, does she fit the bill? A woman who has offered so much to this country, both professionally as an accountant, who has contributed so much to this country as an accountant, as a skilled person, as a taxpayer. Indeed, the Honourable Dr. Brian Walker said we not have enough babies. Well, Ayorma Kuchawat's done a bit in that as well. I think three. At last count. So, 3 children who are Australians, three new Australians to help fill that void, to increase that natural population growth. So, skilled migrants, some are okay. Resettled refugees, well, I'm not sure where the move is coming on that. Are backpackers okay? Are those young people that come here on working holiday visas to help harvest our crops? We've got a lot on the Margaret River at the moment, waiting for vintage to start. They come in on these short-term working holiday visas of a few years. They come, they help, they go home to their home countries. Are they okay? I'm not sure if that counts. What about the PALM scheme, the Pacific Island Labour Mobility Scheme? Again, hard-working workers who come from our close nations, who remit those wages home, who make a significant contribution to their home country's economy by remitting their wages. They come here. I think almost every abattoir in Western Australia relies heavily on PALM workers, our farming systems, even our hospitality sector. So I'm not sure if they're okay, according to the mover of the motion. I think some are okay. But I'm here to tell you that we support migration, and we support migration whether they're from interstate or overseas, because we need the people. We need. Remember, we don't have unlimited migration in this country. You're aware of that. You should know we have a migration system that has a number, has a skilled. I'm a migrant. I came here. I would not be allowed into Australia under the current scheme. Maybe I'm all right as a migrant because I look Anglo-Saxon. I've got an Anglo-Saxon name. I speak with a broad Australian accent, so maybe I'm okay. Maybe I tick the box. My parents came here. My father was an unskilled builder's labourer. My mother was a factory worker from London. They, probably under current schemes would not fit the criteria to come to Australia under our skilled migration system, which our system is built on. I can tell you my parents worked very hard, paid taxes their whole life, contributed significantly. My father spent a lot of time working in regional WA long before the days of FIFO. He lived in Derby. He got, virtually straight off the boat from London. He'd been born on the west coast of Ireland, and he, you can imagine a culture shock for a man like that to be in Derby doing hard manual labour for many months on end, no FIFO. He worked in Meekatharra. He built wheat silos across the wheat belt. My mother came here as a factory worker and ended up working in horticulture. She was out there picking the lettuces and the cauliflowers and the celery, and worked hard all her life. As she got older, she then became a cleaner. She became a cleaner at UWA and worked right up until retirement age. So they were hard-working people who came here as migrants. I think it's interesting that when the mover of this motion quoted Hansard, I think all the people he quoted were migrants. Pierre Young, fantastic contributor to our society. Clara Andrich, Stephen Dawson, all fantastic contributors to our society. Now, he mentioned the Deputy Premier, the Honourable Rita Saffioti. I'm not sure if the Honourable Rita Saffioti was born in Australia, but obviously of good migrant stock. Very hard-working farming family from the Perth Hills area. So, as I said, I'm confused about this term mass migration. I keep hearing it. I don't know what the number is. The mover of this motion couldn't tell us what the number was, just that it's bad, but we don't know what it is or what the number is. What's the number, member?
We work with 130,000. That's your number.
That's your number? Oh, across Australia?
Order, members. Order. This is not a conversation across the chamber. Please direct your remarks through the chair.
So the honourable member said 130,000 is okay, but then I think he also said during his speech that there's 94,000 so that came in last year. So. Oh, so it's 130,000 for the whole of Australia. All right. So we get 10% of that generally. So generally, Western Australia has 10%, 11% of the population. So whenever there's, federal funds coming out or any federal data, we would normally get 10%, 10, 11% of that. So 130,000. So we get 13,000. Is that it? I don't think that's going to be enough to do all the jobs we need them to do. So you asked, why do we enthusiastically support migration? Well, because we have a growing economy. We have a strong pipeline of workers. I'm the Minister for Small Business. I'm the Minister for Agriculture. I go to the regions a lot. Everywhere I go, I say, what's your biggest issue? We cannot attract workers. We need more migration. The regions are actually crying out for migrants to come into their regions. We need skilled workers. We need them across construction, health, education, defence. As long as all those other jobs that are out there, small business people are crying out for skilled migrants. We need to fill those jobs. Now, there's healthcare, and I think the Honourable Pierre Young's out of the chamber at the moment on urgent parliamentary business, but I think as Parliamentary Secretary for Healthcare, he may be providing a contribution if he returns in time. But what I will tell you is overseas migrants fill our workforce demands in the healthcare, and I think we should thank the Honourable Dr Brian Walker. I'm not sure I agree with everything he said, but he stands here as a representative of a highly qualified healthcare practitioner who has come to this country and still, I understand, supports the health services here in Western Australia. So whilst I don't agree with everything you said, I do want to acknowledge the contribution you play. Now, my notes tell me here that almost half of the health workforce was born overseas in Western Australia. Half. And yes, we probably need to all have more babies. I've had 3, I've done my bit, but it's going to take a long time until they flow through to be working in those systems. And the Honourable Brian Walker, I know, has had many more. So skilled migrants also play important roles in jobs, and I hate to say this, migrants play roles in jobs that we find that more migrant workers go to. For whatever reason, our young people aren't going into those roles, which is a shame. So we know that we need migrant services in aged care. You know, when my father, who's now passed away now, but when he was in care with dementia, I think, you know, I would hazard a guess 80–90% of the people working there had been born overseas, and they provided superb care for my father. And I'm terribly sorry that the Honourable Mayor Court had that experience door knocking where someone was complaining that they couldn't understand someone's accent. And I'm sure, no doubt, that she's lived that many times, and it is a travesty that we still have people that think it's okay to call out someone who speaks with an accent or has a foreign-sounding name as somehow being less than what they should be. I think the implication was she couldn't understand the accent. Okay, she couldn't understand him because he was a migrant. Is whatever the point was made, and I don't want to put the words into the Honourable Mayor Court-Schwartz what she said, but I think we all understood. I think we all inherently understood what was happening, and I'm sure we've all witnessed things like that in the past and heard people say such things. So look, we know that. We need these workers in these healthcare. As I said, more than half of the workforce. The other place we need skilled migrants is construction, and we saw this during COVID when our borders were closed. We saw plane loads of migrants leave Australia. We saw our healthcare suffer, and we saw our construction industry suffer. We know that we need more migrants, which is why we have incentive programs, the construction visa subsidy program, and Build a Life in WA. That is about attracting and retaining tradies in WA, construction tradies. And we're doing a great job with our free TAFE. We are making sure our young people are going into those trades. We want more people. We want more people staying in those trades. Yeah, because I guess that's part of having such a strong economy. We have incredibly low unemployment. We essentially have full employment in this state, and so people have lots and lots of choices. And so yes, you might become a tradie, and then the lure of the FIFO lifestyle might draw you away from your community or your trade. That's one of the challenges of having such a strong economy and having low employment, which leads me to think that all of the migrants who are coming here are all working full time, because we know that, because we basically have full employment in this country. There is no one getting a free ride here. They are all working. So I talked about the construction visa subsidy program and Build a Life in WA. More than 2,100 skilled workers have joined the construction workforce as a part of this program, and more than 600 businesses have benefited. So we know we need those workers. We know we need to accelerate housing infrastructure delivery, and we desperately need those construction workers. So skilled migration always has been and will also remain critical to our continued economic success. We can't get by with the 130,000 across Australia, which equates to about 13,000 for Western Australia, that One Nation are proposing. Go tell the regional small businesses I talk to that we're completely cutting skilled migration, and they don't have any workforce to continue to grow their businesses. See how that goes. We have a high demand for skilled workers. We have a high demand for workers across skilled and unskilled roles. Now, you talked about housing. Obviously, we need to keep building houses. We need those workers, but we are making sure that we have provisions to make sure our housing market continues to grow. We've got the largest housing investment program in WA. So last budget brought in investment in housing-related initiatives to a record $5.8 billion. That's with a B, billion. We had a target to deliver 3,300 new homes by mid-2025, delivered on this commitment. Committed to delivering 5,800 social homes. More than 3,800 are completed. 1,000 are currently under construction or under contract. So we're also supporting regional WA. We're releasing land in regional areas. So the regional land booster has sold 1,024 lots into 90 towns, and this has generated more than 2,700 construction jobs in the regions. And if you want to know who's doing those construction jobs in the regions, it is skilled migrants working alongside their Australian employers that are building those houses. We need the migrants to continue to do that. That's supported by a $25 million regional housing support fund, which grants of up to $5 million to enable infrastructure, to enabling infrastructure, that's new connections, to unlock new housing supply. As I said, committed to 5,800 social homes, 3,800 completed, 1,000 under contract, 125 homes added every month. The rent relief program, I want to talk about that because we talked about people struggling to find places to live. We talked about people with this strong economy being able to afford their rent. So in the rent relief program to June is supporting, so we've extended the rent relief program to June 2026, and that'll support over 3,700 households at risk of eviction. We continue to develop new ideas. We want to make sure that WA has the housing we need. So there's new products through Keystart that make it easier for people on lower incomes to purchase their own homes. And one of the challenges is that when we have these people in these jobs like aged care, like childcare, unfortunately their wages are lower and they do struggle at times. And so that's why we have things like the rent relief program. That's why we have things like Keystart. That's why we're providing concessional loans to the private sector to incentivise build-to-rent projects. We know more people are renting as the population grows. We've partnered with the Commonwealth to deliver thousands of new social and affordable houses, $1.9 million in federal government funding through Housing Australia to deliver over 2,300 new affordable homes, over 1,200 new social homes across WA. I've got so many things to talk about here, but I've got 5 minutes left. So we have the WA Government's $75 million build-to-rent Kickstart Fund opened in October for expressions of interest. That's a major election commitment to bring more rentals to the market. We are partnering with the private sector because we know the private sector is key to building these properties that people will rent. So the fund helps to attract the private investment into build-to-rent developments. It provides concessional loans for new build-to-rent projects, and the initiative is expected to support delivery of hundreds of new long-term rentals in WA, long-term rentals that my children, yours children, children, everyone's children can actually have a place to live as they grow and enter the workforce. So we continue to work collaboratively with the community housing sector to ensure delivery of projects. There's almost 100 new dwellings completed via the community housing grants, and refurbishment works completed on almost 870 dwellings. We want to continue to enhance that community housing sector. We want to strengthen and speed delivery of social housing across the state. So there's $6 million community housing capability program funded through the state budget through until 2028-29. Excuse me. I might need to go see one of those overseas born health workers if I keep up with this croaky voice. Transport was mentioned. As someone who comes in every week from the regions, I feel the pain of being on that freeway coming from the south. And so transport infrastructure is another cornerstone of our investment strategy. We do have strong population growth, and we know that puts increased pressure on roads and rail and public transport. And so we know that we have to have sustained investment in expansion and modernisation of our transit corridors. So major public transport projects continue to be delivered to reduce congestion, to make sure that we support economic participation. We need people to get to those jobs, to get to those TAFE, to get to those training. And we are, of course, very proud of Metronet. Despite the criticism, we're very proud of it. It remains central to our effort. New rail lines, new stations. In June, we opened that 17-kilometre Thornley to Coburn link, the first east-west line east-west cross line connection. My husband, who's lived in regional WA for 30 years, I was out driving with him the other day, visiting friends in Perth, and and we went over the Thornley Coburn line, and my husband was like, "What's that? Where's that train line go?" So I was very proud to tell him that's the Thornley Coburn line. So these connections strengthen networks. So we've recently also obviously reopened the Armidale line, extend to Byford. We know Byford is one of our fastest growing areas. We know that as our economic activity increases in this state, we need more places for people to live, but they need to be able to get to their jobs, and that's what these projects are about. They create more livable neighbourhoods. We're working closely. We have seen record public transport patronage. So people are using this new public transport. They are getting off the roads. They see the confidence in that modern, reliable public transport systems. And I'm really proud that WA has such a modern system. Anyone who's been overseas and has seen those, long-standing, well-known public transit systems, I think it's great that WA is now on the map with Metronet. Regional transport continues to be important. We have a vast number of regional roads. It is a massive road network. So we've had the Black Spot program, $57 million on safety projects across WA, the Regional Road Safety Program to government roads, $125 million over 5 years. Their first round's already been awarded, $39 million across 27 projects, unlocking, upgrading more than 400 kilometres of local roads. As I said, it's a big state. Again, with my Minister for Midwest hat on, roads and transport continues to be an issue, and I'm glad that we continue to pour money into those regional roads. We obviously, I know, here he is, the Parliamentary Secretary for the Minister for Health will provide some more information on health, but what I will say is, as I said, we are funding more health. There is $4.7 billion in capital expenditure over the next 4 years, significant builds across both metro and regional. Geraldton, Mullawa, Peel spring to mind, upgrades in Bunbury, upgrades in Geraldton. I know there's a number of other regional hospitals. But I will just finish by, I guess, reiterating that we don't support the motion. We do support migration. That when I asked that, question which migrants are not welcome according to the mover of the motion, all the migrants we have in this state contribute. That's evidenced by our record low unemployment rates. We know the contribution. We see the contribution in our societies. We see it when we go to the cafes. We see it when we go to the hospitals. We see it when we pass the construction sites. We see it when we go to our farms. The migration that we have here is supporting Western Australians. It's supporting our growth, and I'm very proud to be part of a government that supports it.
Question is the motion be agreed. The Honourable Ewan Sibma.
Thank you, Deputy President. This has been a long year. It's been a long few weeks, and increasingly I've felt that this has been a very long morning. And it's only just begun. It's only just begun. Deputy President, yes, I rise as lead speaker for the opposition in relation to this motion, but I speak as well as the son of a migrant. My wife is the daughter of migrants. This chamber is replete with people who have migrated to Western Australia and made a contribution to public life, or are the children or grandchildren of migrants to these shores. And I should point out, without wishing to embarrass the Honourable Rod Caddies and his colleague, 50% of your representation in this chamber is by dint of the migration system. Might I say that there are issues dealt with in the motion which I think are worthy of discussion in a sober, orderly, considered and sensitive way. The motion is not irredeemable. However, the problem with it is that the finger of blame is pointed at a group of people who are always an easy target. There are problems with our migration system, and I speak with a little measure of credibility because I've worked in that space as a border security advisor and as an advisor on skilled migration. I know both sides of it. There is problems with the migration system to the degree that it has come into gridlock. in terms of assessments of visa classes. There has been a reliance on temporary visas, which I think is completely and utterly unhealthy. And I think there is a perversity in an industry which has grown up around system complexity, and that industry is the migration agent industry. Now, that was reformed in the last sort of 18 months to 2 years of the Howard government, because I think there are some very, very odd practices here which are not in the interests of the migrants themselves, and they're not in the national interest. There are some fundamental economic principles, however, which are throughout this motion but have not been addressed, and one is supply and demand, the foundational macroeconomic principle. When there is more demand than there is supply, well, yes, you do have problems. There is absolutely no doubt that governments nationally, at the federal level, state and territory jurisdiction, are struggling to keep up with demand. There has been an increase in population, and that increase in population has been admitted by this government in its budget papers. Indeed, I asked the Parliamentary Secretary representing the Treasurer about that during the budget estimates period. I don't recall One Nation speaking about that previously, but this is an issue. More demand places pressure on the system. That is a fundamental truism. But likewise, there's a rule of thumb in economics, which is there is no such thing as a free lunch. Every benefit has a cost, every cost potentially has a benefit. You need to see both ways. You can't just... This is the problem, I think, with the spirit behind this motion, is that if One Nation actually had its way... And this is another problem too, I might just make a slight deviation here. Whenever I get the opportunity to decry the import of US-style politics in Australia, I'll call it out. I think it's the most unhealthy importation of political sentiment that anyone could have, and I think we should do whatever we can to not mimic that kind of carry-on. Likewise, as a parochial Western Australian, I get frustrated when we import eastern states-based political narratives and fights into Western Australia when they're not needed and not warranted. And I think that this is what this discussion is about. There are elements of your motion which are actually quite sober and considered in the written form, although I don't 100% agree with them. But the rhetorical device of mass migration, I think you were then compelled to justify what it is that you meant by that, and you couldn't. You couldn't. So the only assumption a reasonable person can make is that you don't like all migrants. And that's unfortunate. I don't think that's what you intend, but that unfortunately is what you leave, because there is nothing that One Nation does which is considered or constructive. This is what populist politics gives you. Very easy to simplify problems or point to the problems, but when you give One Nation the opportunity to do something constructive, they don't know what to do. They don't know what to do. And you had that opportunity with the State Development Bill, a bill that you ran to the populist side on and wanted to refer away to committee. If you want to meet demand, you have to encourage investment in this state. You have to encourage economic growth. You need a workforce. The problem with One Nation is that you are the pimple on the backside of the Australian politic. They're just to irritate. They're just to irritate and provide very little of substance. Unfortunately, people get captured in the slipstream when they are disenchanted, when they are disenfranchised. And the problem with that is, unfortunately and with respect, is that you let governments off the hook when governments aren't doing their job properly. There are serious debates to be had, and they have been had in this chamber, and they will be had in this. We'll be having them after you leave, member. I've had them before you were here. All right? There are serious debates to be had in this chamber about the performance of the state government. particularly with respect to the management of its infrastructure program. And the state government is under a bit of threat, if you haven't noticed, with the eastern states, probably Pauline Hanson as well, attempting to take the GST, which is rightfully ours, out of our hands. I actually have not. I think One Nation in Western Australia has been distinguished by its lack of pro-Western Australian positioning with respect to the GST. If I'm incorrect, I'm happy to be stand corrected. But that is the clear and present economic danger facing Western Australia, is the eastern states' collusion to take our GST. There is also a problem which is emerging and has been mentioned, and I'm sure my colleague, if he gets the chance, the Honourable Anthony Spagnola, will speak to this, about the diminishing share of Commonwealth infrastructure funding into Western Australia, which is actually exacerbating problems on the supply and service side. But if there is one infrastructure issue to get right, which affects every service for every Western Australian, it is the reliability and the stability of the electricity grid. Now, this debate has gone in all kinds of directions this morning. I think it is a function of everybody being ratty at the end of the year, and probably there's a lot of unmet demand among individuals. But if there's one infrastructure question to get right, it's that one. It is that one. Because the closing down of Collie in 2030 is probably going to lead to significant problems in the stability and the reliability of the grid. If there is an infrastructure question to get, if it closes, and that is a very, very helpful. Again, I'm sorry, because I quite like the member, but he lets himself down. He lets himself down. Again, we just have a grab bag of slogans and issues, and again, the importation of the eastern states' frenetic political dialogue into Western Australia, where it absolutely doesn't belong. It doesn't belong. I don't know what that means, how I'm culpable somehow, because the government intends to close down Collie Power in 2030. I mean, that argument is just absolutely beyond the call. The member must also realise, and I thought, credit to the minister, we have a problem in this state filling jobs. We have a problem in this state filling jobs. I'm also the spokesperson for training and workforce development. I'd like to have a workforce to develop. We need to encourage people who want to make a home here in Western Australia to move here and to make a contribution to our community and our economy. Unfortunately, as soon as you start just identifying migration as the source of all ill, you are providing the greatest disincentive to people to move here, work here, live here, enrol their children in school here and invest here, and to make that contribution. It is just too easy. It is the same rhetorical game that your party has been playing for years and years and years, until it is written, and it's written by one or two people, one or two, and you've grabbed Barnaby out of the reject bin, and you've imported him back. I am sorry, but you cannot be taken seriously, despite the fact that the issues that you have raised are serious ones deserving some consideration. But the solutions you provide are vaporware. You're in no position to set migration targets, and I'll also underscore the obvious. State governments, state parliaments do not set migration policy. We don't. That is a discussion to be had in the federal parliament, and it is a discussion that needs to be held, because I don't know really what the federal Albanese government's position on migration is. I think we do need a longer-term, sustainable migration plan that we understand, but understand that every plan fails in the first 5 minutes of implementation. There was some merit to be had in this bill. There are problems, obviously, with the health system that the Liberal Party has been calling out for at least the last 4 or 5 years. There are issues as well, obvious issues with housing affordability. But the problems with housing and housing affordability go well beyond just an upsurge in net overseas migration, which I now think is tapering down a little bit. There is a whole of system disincentive. We have tax systems, planning systems, which have contributed to the malaise, the problems that we're in. But your fix, unfortunately, is not a fix at all. It will just make the problem worse. I wish we could have actually just dedicated ourselves to one of these limbs of the motion. I think we would have had a less rancorous debate. But as it stands, this is very difficult to support, despite some of the merit in the subject matter that you brought.
Question is the motion be agreed. The Honourable Sophie McNeill.
President, and I'd just like to thank the Honourable Jorn Sigma for that contribution. We don't often agree, me and the Honourable Member, but I really appreciated that. I won't repeat the graphic description. It was a bit too much this time of the morning, but I'm greatly appreciated that, Honourable Jorn Sigma. And also I wanted to thank the Honourable Minister Jackie Jarvis for highlighting the incredible contribution that migrants give to this state, and how she outlined all the incredible work that goes into both our hospital system, our regional communities, thanks to the work of migrants. But I also particularly wanted to thank the Honourable Ayo Tuat for her powerful contribution, highlighting the trauma that this kind of motion brings to people who are from migrant backgrounds, who are from diverse communities. So I don't think it's a surprise to anyone, actually, that the Greens will not support this motion. We think it is a motion that is rooted in racist fear-mongering, scapegoating and disinformation. I think that really needs to be called out, the disinformation that we're seeing here. And it's disinformation like this that really exacerbates the racism that migrants and people of colour experience in our community every day. And it is absolutely shameful that members in this place continue to target these communities, weaponising disinformation and scapegoating migrants for problems that are actually due to the failures of governments, and the Honourable Jorn Sigma spoke to some of that. But it is important that we do understand in this place the gravity of this kind of racist fear-mongering. And I think it is a disgrace that someone in a perceived position of power, like the Honourable Member, chooses to use their platform in this way, because as the Honourable Jorn Sigma pointed out, there are serious issues here in this motion, but by falsely spreading this disinformation and scapegoating immigrants, we have to think about that migrants are to blame for all the ills in our society. That is you didn't. It's all there, Honourable Member. It is all there in your motion. It is all there. And this comes at a time when there is a real risk here right now. The rise of neo-Nazis marching on our streets here in Western Australia. We saw it out the front of the New South Wales Parliament the other week. There is a real risk.
Order, members. Order. 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 This is not a conversation. You direct your remarks through the chair, please, and the Speaker has the call. The Honourable Sophie McNeill.
Thank you, President. Neo-Nazis have been marching on the streets of our cities and towns, and it is terrifying. And you can understand why people of colour, why people from migrant communities are feeling so scared at the moment, and the Greens stand with them. And that's why we think it is actually irresponsible to move a motion framed in this way, because there are great risks to these communities, and we have been hearing stories all across this country of how people have been feeling about this at the moment. And we have to remind the Chamber, yes, we are all migrants here, and that justice in this country must be founded in First Nations justice, and that these are the original owners of this land of which we have all migrated to. But I just wanted to quote the Australian Council of Social Services, because they are the national peak body that actually do know a thing about cost of living pressures. And they released a statement on this very issue just a couple of weeks ago. And it said, politicians have a responsibility to lead by example. Language and actions that amplify harmful stereotypes about communities fuel attitudes of fear, distrust and hatred towards those communities, and they put community safety and wellbeing at risk. We call on all political leaders to condemn these acts and choose words and actions to actively combat discrimination and marginalisation in society, grounded in respect and a commitment to the rights of all people. So, you know, we've had that peak body that advocates on cost of living in this country that we all know is a massive issue, and those are the words. And I think we need to take a moment and think about that. All members actually, all politicians across this country, because unfortunately we have seen a rise in this language in our federal parliament as well. And I would like to speak about that shocking racist stunt that we saw the honourable member's federal colleague pull in the Senate the other day. And I actually want to quote the words of my dear friend and colleague, Deputy Greens leader, Senator Mehreen Faruqi. So Senator Mehreen Faruqi is a great inspiration to me. She was the first Muslim woman to be elected to an Australian parliament, and she has to sit there in that chamber as, I don't even want to say her name because she loves publicity, so we all know who I'm talking about, when she put that burqa on. And, you know, my heart just went out to Senator Faruqi that day to see what she has to endure in that chamber and that horrific act of racism. And this is what Senator Faruqi had to say. She said, "The Senator's racist bile is extremely damaging and it unleashes vile hate and abuse from bigots. It must be nipped in the bud. People who look like me have all been told to go back to where they come from at one point or another, and it is harmful and unacceptable every single time. I've copped it more times than I can count, and so have so many others in our community. Enough is enough. As a Muslim woman who has faced this racism and discrimination from the day she stepped into public life, I plead with you to act on it." And this is something I've seen the comments that my colleague Senator Faruqi receives on Twitter, on Instagram. She actually took the senator we don't want to name to court because of her shocking statements. But I just think there is a real need for those of us who are not from recently arrived migrant backgrounds to speak up and call out this racism and to stand in solidarity with our friends, with our colleagues, with our loved ones and with our communities. And the federal Greens actually had a really great response when the senator pulled that stunt in the federal parliament. They shared on social media how many times One Nation had voted against cost of living measures and how many times One Nation had voted in the federal parliament against housing relief as well. So, you know, there's a lot of this racist rhetoric blaming migrants for our housing problems and for cost of living measures, but when it came to the crunch, they voted against it every time. So I thought that was a really good way to push back against that terrible racist stunt that we saw in federal parliament. But I mentioned earlier how I appreciated the contribution of Honourable Jorn Sigma, but one thing that I do find worrying is that we are seeing parts of our federal Liberal Party echo some of this language that we've seen One Nation bring into this chamber. So we saw Andrew Hastie, Liberal member, the federal member for Canning for Western Australia, post on his Facebook yesterday. He said, "Labor's immigration crisis means the workers we rely on can't afford to live here anymore." And President, I seek leave to table this Facebook post by the member for Canning, federal member for Canning.
The member seeks leave to table that document. Is leave granted? The document is tabled.
Thank you, Brian. So I appreciate what the Honourable Jorn Sigma said about rejecting US-style politics, and I 100% agree with him, and I hope that his federal colleagues are listening, because I'm really alarmed by some of the anti-immigration commentary that we have seen, particularly from the federal member for Canning, Andrew Hastie. And, I grew up with John Howard as the Prime Minister, and I will always remember him standing there and saying, we will decide who comes to this country and the circumstances under which they come. And for me, that inspired me for a life fighting against, fighting for the rights of refugees, asylum seekers, for the rights of all of us to be treated as equals. And, I think that the Federal Liberal Party has to really examine some of the language that has been coming out of some of their members, and I really hope that people like the Honourable Jorn Sigma, their opinions win out at the end of the day, because the rhetoric we're seeing from people like Mr Andrew Hastie at the moment is deeply alarming. Because it is true that these public displays of anti-migrant white supremacy, they haven't popped out of nowhere. They've been building for years, and they are emboldened by the words of politicians like Senator Pauline Hanson and One Nation across this country. And I think it's really clear that the far right are doing everything that they can right now across the world to spread disinformation and to recruit people to their cause. And they are targeting migrants. We're seeing it in America, we're seeing it in Europe, we're seeing it right now with Farage in the UK. And what they're doing is they're trying to manipulate people who have genuine concerns about how society is failing them and trying to lure them towards their racist worldview. We know that the failings of our housing crisis is because of successive governments who've treated this as an investment opportunity rather than as a human right. We know migrants aren't to blame, but we're seeing the far right try and lure people over by this kind of inflammatory language blaming migrants. And so I think it's really incumbent, and I just want to end to point out that I think that for us on the progressive side of politics, we must work together to stop this rise of the far right that we're seeing all over the world and here in Australia. And we have to offer hopeful and concrete solutions to these issues, because when people are struggling and when they feel that the system isn't working for them, then they're more susceptible to this kind of racist scapegoating. So we need to offer something better. We need to offer communities that are built on solidarity rather than exclusion. And when people have authentic community, when they feel genuinely connected and supported, then these far-right narratives lose their appeal. Loneliness and isolation and economic struggle, they're among the far-right's most effective recruitment tools. And so we need to make those tools obsolete, us on the progressive side of politics. So we need to fight for material improvements in people's lives, for proper housing, for healthcare, for living wages, for food security. And we have to build the power of our workers' movement, and we need to challenge the concentration of wealth that we have seen, particularly in this country. I would say we should be blaming the billionaires, not the migrants. We need to blame the billionaires. That's who we should be targeting. So our progressive movement has a lot of work to do. I look forward to doing it together, and I appreciate the government's strong stance against this motion. But this is our challenge. We don't have a second to waste as we confront the rise of the far right across the globe. Thank you, President.
The question is the motion be agreed. The Honourable Philip Scott.
Thank you, Acting President. I was hoping that we'd have a respectful, rational debate in here today, but it seems that feelings count more than facts. My honourable colleague Rod Caddies has at no time ever stigmatised migrants. His attack is on government policy, on mass migration. In fact, One Nation acknowledges that migrants from the very outset of the birth of this nation have made a significant contribution, from the Afghans who trekked across this great nation with the camels to the Japanese pearl drivers off Broome. And in fact, I was heartened at a branch launch on Sunday that I had a refugee from South Sudan who came up to me asking to be a branch coordinator. I had another gentleman,
Order, members. Order. Order.
I just remind the honourable.
Order.
I just remind the honourable.
Members. Direct your remarks through the chair.
Just remind the Honourable A.L. McCaw-Chewett that the Labor Party was the policy of white Australia for 60 years. It was a policy of the Labor government to divide people on medical choices. It was the Labor Party who wanted to divide this nation on the voice debate. We want one nation, united, relieving poverty, which is created by poor government policies. The problem we have, as Dr Brian Walker, the Honourable Dr Brian Walker has alluded to, is we have had a reduced birth rate for many years, and this has created an economic need for stimulation to the economy. And this has been an easy fix just to have mass migration. And who does this benefit? It benefits the wealthy end of town, because they are shielded from the consequences of mass migration. They have property portfolios. I think I'm correct by saying I'm the owner renter in both houses of this Parliament, so I've seen firsthand the effects of this. I stand to be corrected if that's not correct. I'm also married to a person of culturally and linguistically diverse. I've experienced racism directed towards her. I've experienced racism directed towards 3 of my children who have olive skin. So I don't need lectures about racism from the Labour Party or the Greens. I can tell you that our boss leaves Rod Caddies, the Honourable Rod Caddies and myself, to focus on state politics and on federal politics. Unlike yourselves, who are wedded to Labour policy and can't even think for yourselves. You can't even honour the protocols of this House by constant interruptions, can you?
Order, members. The Honourable Philip Scott.
Thank you, Acting President. So I say again, our attack is on government policy, it's not on migrants. In fact, about 8 weeks ago, I got an Uber ride from a migrant from Pakistan. And he said to me, I came to this country for a better standard of life, but I'm working like a slave just to make ends meet. So we are protecting this nation, not just for people who support one nation, for people who migrate here, that their standard of living is maintained. We can debate till we're blue in the face about supply, and that is a problem. No one's denying that. And we do need skilled workers. We do need skilled migrants. I find it absurd that we can't have a discussion on mass immigration. I was listening to 6BR last week, and Trent Fleskins was on 6BR talking in the property segment, and he was asked what the problem is. He said there can be no denying that supply is a problem. But when you have increased sudden immigration post-COVID, it does create an issue. And he said, I'm not saying that from a xenophobic point of view, but purely from an industry point of view. I've tested the waters to see if government ministers really care about the poverty and the working poor that this state are experiencing at the moment. I did question the Honourable Stephen Dawson during budget estimates, a person I greatly respect, and he stated the percentage of people born overseas now is less than the percentage of people who were born overseas who were here in the 1800s. Acting President, I think that's disingenuous because we know everyone at that time was a migrant. It is true, but it's not relevant to today's debate. I think it's a non sequitur argument. And then a fortnight later, the Honourable Dr Parvinder Kaur rose up to give the fun fact that her DNA was closer to Aboriginal Australians. And this received the media attention. And unfortunately, it became a weapon for the far right, the very people all of us despise. They disseminated footage of the speech through their networks. We are one, we are all Australians, and I repeat that again. A few points were made about how much about migrants contributing to a health system. I don't deny that. My daughter works in the health system, and there was a bunch of statistics reeled off. But the health system requiring so many skilled migrants is actually proof of a health system that is not coping. The Honourable Dr Kaur verified this by citing Australia ranking the 6th highest in the OECD for internationally trained doctors to 21st lowest for domestically trained doctors per capita. Why do we have such a need for doctors? Could it be because the rate of migration exceeds what we can cope with? Honourable Dr Kaur stated just last year a record 5,431 doctors from overseas registered to practice in Australia, an 80% increase compared with pre-COVID. And what happened just after COVID? We know mass immigration occurred. So there was nothing in that argument that debunked the argument that the health system is under strain. We're witnessing a health system that is simply not coping, and nobody is calling migrants a burden on society, as has been stated. Our beef is with mass overseas migration. As I stated earlier, I'm the only Member of Parliament who does not own a property, so I don't benefit from rising property prices that some politicians do. I stand corrected if that is a fact. OK, I'd like to know. OK, thank you. So we are advocating for the people affected, the people on the ground. And when I hear people saying, what about the children, I would remind them that we have 100,000 children living in poverty in WA, statistics cited by the Child Poverty in Australia 2025 report. Let's hear how mass immigration is helping them. We just need an acknowledgement that there is a problem and that we get back to sustainable migration levels. We know that this is not a state government issue, and we know that Albanese, the Prime Minister, the Honourable Anthony Albanese, will listen to Honourable Roger Cook when he rings him up. So I'll call on the Premier to get on the phone to him. So, in closing, I'd just like to reiterate, I'd just like to say, actually, the Honourable Jackie Jarvis did mention the Palm project that was initiated by the Morrison government at the federal level, where Pacific Island workers are shipped into this country to work at abattoirs and other places. I've heard on the ground they're treated like slaves. They have rent and board and food taken out of their wages, and what little they have left they send back overseas. Is that the Labour Party of old representing the workers, or is it just an easy fix? So I commend the motion to the House, and I'll give time for my honourable colleague to reply.
Question is the motion be agreed. The Honourable Anthony Spagnuolo.
Thank you, President. Well, it's been an interesting debate this morning. A few alliances broken and moving around as we've gone. So I want to thank everyone for their contributions so far. I'll try and leave a little bit of time for a speaker after me as well. Now, in that very considered, a very sensible contribution from my colleague, the Honourable Jorn Sidma, he made best performance of the day. I agree. It's best performance every day. I reckon he's an absolute superstar. Now, he made a reference to infrastructure funding, which I actually wasn't planning to mention, but I have to now because the best performer of the day called me out on it. But it's probably just useful to talk about it for the mover of the motion, or the party that's moving the motion, One Nation, because they've made a few references to not being far right. It's sort of hard to really understand where they seem to think they sit. We all know what they really want to do. They want to replace the Liberal Party as the centre-right party of Australia. Now, but there's a problem. If you want to do that, you have to actually do real work, and you have to read. You can't just ask Grok or ChatGPT to spit out a bunch of talking points and read some pre-prepared notes in the chamber, right? You have to do work. And let me give you an example of what that means. It means doing things like reading budgets. Reading the numbers in the budget, interpreting them, bringing that into the chamber and contributing it to debate. Now, what Jorn Sidma was referring to, the Honourable Jorn Sidma, man of the day, man of the hour, the Honourable Jorn Sidma, what he was referring to is that last week in Canberra there was Senate estimates, and some of the Liberal parties, not the One Nation senators, because they don't do this kind of work, including your West Australian colleague, Liberal senators asked about West Australian infrastructure payments, and they were told that infrastructure payments are declining, and they were given several reasons as to why. For example, in Senate estimates last week, the Liberal senators were told that the state government hasn't renegotiated several funding agreements. Right? This is a thing called detail, okay? And the details matter when you're trying to have a nuanced debate. The state government hasn't renegotiated several funding agreements for the state. So the forecasting in the budget shows our funding falling off a cliff, while in New South Wales it goes up. In Queensland, where your mate's from, it goes up, right? West Australia's not doing so good. Now, that may change. This is what Treasury officials were saying, because those agreements may be renegotiated. You're not listening to the point. This is my point. You're not listening. What I'm doing is providing detail and nuance to contribute to debate. It's not just some random spaghetti sandwich of words, the honourable member. It's actual detail, which leads to a point, right? So I'm trying my best. I was inspired by the Honourable Jorn Sidma. He's an inspiring individual. It requires actual detail. Now, if you read the federal budget, you would know there was a section called payments to states, and it has the total payments to states, it has payments per state, it has a sub-bit called payments for specific purposes, and it lays out GST. And what it says is that all payments to states increase by 15.5% over the next 4 years, but in Western Australia it increases by 0.17%. Okay? Now, you know how I know that, honourable member? Because I read the budget, right? And I've interpreted it and I brought it into the chamber to contribute to debate. It's not a bunch of random words. There's a point, right? There's a structure to the contribution and there's actual data to back it up, which I would encourage One Nation to try and do. This is why you will never replace the Liberal Party as a centre-right party, because, frankly, you are dysfunctional. You are dysfunctional and you don't know how to do real work. It will never, ever happen. Right? Now, if you really stood up for our state, you would be making that point in this speech. Why is infrastructure funding going down? Why hasn't the state government negotiated better outcomes from Canberra? And as I've said in previous debates, it's so bad that the entire GST deal that the Morrison government brought into place in 2018, all the benefits are gone, right? So if you add GST and payments for specific purposes, they are $20.4 billion now, and they're still $20.4 billion in 4 years' time. So the entire increase in GST is taken away by the cut in payments for specific purposes. Again, honourable member, that requires detail. That requires reading a budget. I do want to leave some time for another speaker, so I won't go for the whole 10 minutes. But I do want to just touch on something else. We all know that this is not really the main point of the day. With the greatest of respect to the member, we are here today, of course. I presume it's going to be a long night, talking about the State Development Bill. Now, there's been a new alliance in the chamber. Now, I might be wrong because we heard some pretty pointed remarks from the Greens earlier from the Honourable Sophie McNeil. But, of course, what we have seen on the State Development Bill is that the Greens and One Nation are working together. Now, well, we're talking about state politics. So you're going to like this contribution very much. Maybe I'll go the full 10 minutes if you want to keep going. Because I can spend 10 minutes on this if you like, Honourable Sophie McNeil. Now, I've been thinking about this new alliance. Maybe they need some uniforms. Maybe we've got One Nation. We've got One Nation, the orange team. We've got the Greens. Now, I was trying to think, if you combine orange and green, what do you get? What's something that's useful for this the new team? And, of course, there's a few variations depending on the combination, but one of those which I think is useful is khaki. So I'm going to dub you guys. It's Team Khaki over here, the new alliance, One Nation and the Greens, and it's useful. It's useful. I'm sure Rod Caddy's has some hunting gear he can pull out. Tim Clifford, I reckon he's a fan of David Attenborough. I reckon he wore a bit of khaki. So I look forward to you guys getting your new khaki uniforms out, because you love working together. And it's the only alliance that's styled by a camping catalogue, the Greens and One Nation, right? The awkward part is they want the same outcomes for completely different reasons. The Greens want lower population to cut emissions, and we know why One Nation wants lower population. It's the same outcome, but they're using a different GPS to try and get there. But ultimately, on that issue, they are aligned. Can you imagine the joint parties policy document from the new Team Khaki alliance in state parliament? It'd be two pamphlets stapled together. The only thing in common would be the staple, of course. One would be called sustainability, the other one's suspicion, because that basically defines most things that One Nation members contribute to this place. And imagine the joint press conference this week when the State Development Bill passes. They're out there looking sufficiently annoyed, wearing their camping gear. This is wrong, they'll say to the press. This is wrong. One microphone, two sets of staffers, furiously deleting old tweets. We can't let people know how much we really don't like each other. Team Khaki, it's got to stand. It's got to stand. Now, this motion, as I said, it talks about... It's a blossoming relationship. It's a blossoming relationship over there in Team Khaki. It's like a cactus, prickly, confusing, and best viewed from a safe distance, acting president. Oh, there we go. Big stroke, finding words. Now, in fact, I was thinking about this press conference, this blossoming romance. They'll be finishing each other's sentences. Just picture it. The Greens will stand up.
The Honourable Sophie McNeill on a point of order.
Thank you, Acting President. This isn't a debate about the State Development Bill. This is a debate about the motion, and I would encourage the member to actually speak to the motion, not the State Development Bill. Thank you.
There is no point of order. The Honourable Anthony Spagnolo.
Thank you, Acting President. A win for Team Khaki, or maybe not. We'll see. Now, they'll be finishing each other's sentences, Acting President. Just imagine it. The Honourable Sophie McNeill will stand up. We need fewer. The One Nation member will jump in. We need fewer migrants. No, says Sophie McNeill. We need fewer emissions. Exactly, says One Nation. We need less migrant emissions, or something like that. That'll be this awkward new party. You could say that opposites attract, Acting President, but this is like opposites accidentally booking the same Airbnb and now pretending it's all fine. And we all know how the Honourable Tim Clifford feels about Airbnbs, Acting President. It's like watching a rom-com where the soundtrack is just mutual suspicion. And of course, the thing about khaki, it's a great colour for these two smaller parties and their new partnership, because it's one of those colours, back to the hunting theme, you can fire a few shots at the main parties from the wilderness, but then avoid any questions because, of course, you can disappear into the shrubbery the moment anyone asks, so how does any of this work? That's Khaki Alliance for you, Acting President. Now, there's almost 5 minutes left, so I will draw to a conclusion. I will say, and if I can return back to a more considered contribution inspired by my colleague, the Honourable Jorn Cibber, who, as was mentioned earlier, was man of the hour, man of the day. There were some parts of this motion. That were useful if explained and put into the right context. Right? There is an issue with housing supply. There is an issue with the delivery of services in this state. The house system's under pressure. We've got a lot of talk and rhetoric from the state government. What I'd like to see the state government do is stop pretending like it's some big surprise that we have the housing crisis. We have known this has been the case for many, many years. It's too late 4 or 5 years into the crisis to make these big statements and big contributions. Now, with 5 minutes left, I'll draw to a close there, but I'll just finish by...
With 5 minutes of the debate remaining, the Honourable Rod Caddies may choose to exercise the right of reply.
Thank you, President.
Honourable Rod Caddies.
Acting President. Now, it's funny, we get this attack. It's obviously just a political party attack. It's not really much about the motion. It was all about a little, let's put on a show how good the Liberals are and how bad One Nation are. And the truth is, we all know that the Liberal Party have failed Western Australia. We've seen how Labor got in a landslide the last election and the election before, and we've seen why they got in 2017, because the Liberals had been failing the people of Western Australia. So we can make it all a tax on political parties if we like. We could point out there's endless amounts of things we could come up with policy that the Liberals have let this state down. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give some credit, because there's that, to the Labor Party about the things they are doing. We might as well, if we want to start attacking people, you want to attack One Nation, let's turn it around and say, well, as the members have been talking about through this House about what they've been doing for social housing, what they've been doing for education, with the TAFE systems, with the money. See, we could turn it into a political debate about what party's doing what, because that's what you're using it about. My motion was about nothing about an attack on migrants. It was the elephant in the room, like I said, about how many people, it's pure figures, numbers into this state, which people have spoken about on that side of the House themselves, saying how it was a problem. There is issues there. So that was the thing. The motion was written in a way that we could talk about that, because it is a problem. And like I said numerous times, it wasn't attacking migrants. You've heard my honourable colleague talk about, we've had many migrants joining our party. On our branch launches, we've had heaps of people from different backgrounds, from different countries, coming across to us in large numbers. Now, the Honourable Ayor Chewap turned it straight away into an emotive thing, just attacking our party. Thank you to the Honourable Brian Walker. He spoke sense, talked about the motion as it was, and, didn't totally agree with everything, but contributed to some things that were there. Minister Jackie Jarvis, the Honourable Jackie Jarvis, the same as the Honourable Jorn Sigma, talked about, I didn't know what even mass migration was, what I was talking about, mass migration. Yes, mass. They say, well, what is mass? It's a large number. It's more than we can sustain. That's why it's not just migration, because we're not against migration. Migration is something, as been mentioned by members here today and continually over a period of time, we do need migration in this state. I asked a question just yesterday about the migration, nominated migration program, and it was another typical fob off of my answer, basically saying 1 to 4, the federal government is responsible. But when I look up that actual program, it says WA makes all the decisions on who they analyse the applications, they approve them, they do it. It's only when the federal have problems with it, the federal can override it. It basically is in their court, but it's actually the WA government. Well, I asked how many, what professions. They could give me them answers because they're the ones approving them. They're the ones looking at the applications, but they didn't want to give me that. They hide away. It's like secrecy. Why can't we know who the skilled migrants were, how many, what they were, so that we could see, so that I could have then seen openly with an open government, transparent government, telling us what these migration figures were and who they were in that skilled migration. And so you want answers about the migration answers. We've got One Nation came up with a thing which the Liberals ended up putting in place. Apprentices, 75% in the first year, 50% in the second year, 25% in the third year of being apprentice. Things like that. We could have been doing things. We've got graduate nursing. We say we don't have enough nurses, but with that immigration, we've got to bring these nurses in. Well, I was speaking to a person that's been a nurse for 45 years or something, director of nursing in WA, yesterday, and asking me to talk about graduate nursing places. She said there's heaps of nurses she knows that can't get a graduate placement, so they can't get a job. So there's all these things we could fix straight away. Why isn't the government making more graduate places for nurses? Then we wouldn't have to bring in so many nurses through migration. We could be employing Australians that are here that are actually completing their nursing degrees and then can't get a job because they can't get a graduate placement. There's plenty of things that could be done. Nurse practitioners, talking about making nurses nurse practitioners, that would take pressure off doctors, that would deal with other things that doctors wouldn't need to then. So that would free up. We'd have nurses.
Members, the time for debate has lapsed and the question is the motion be agreed. All those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Those to the contrary say no. No. I believe the noes have it. Divide. There being a call for division, ring the bells. Sorry? You're going to vote on the no? Yeah. Can I have that script? There's no division script here. Oh, thank you. Lock the doors. Members, the question is the motion be agreed. Members voting with the aye shall pass to the right of the chair. Members voting for the no shall pass to the left of the chair. I appoint the Honourable Rod Caddies, teller for the noes, and the Honourable Lauren Cayune, I'll start that again. I appoint the Honourable Rod Caddy, teller for the ayes, and the Honourable Lauren Cayune, teller for the noes. And before the tellers tell, I cast my vote with the noes. The results of the division are ayes 4, noes 27. The question is resolved in the negative.